Hello there, and welcome to episode 11 of the Songranting podcast, where I answer songwriting-based questions taken from social media, my mailing list, as well as some questions thrown in from my private coaching clients and students. Today's episode is taken from a private coaching call with a young client of mine where basically I was asked about my own personal process when it came to writing songs, and specifically what I typically start with in the process. So simply put, the question was, when you're writing songs, do you start with a melody or do you start with a chord progression? So this is a really, really good question. And we dig into it in depth in this conversation, but just to sum things up, I'll just say it really all depends. You know, this can vary greatly for me personally, just depending on the genre that I'm writing in, but the conversation brought up a lot of really tasty nuggets of information that I think will be really helpful for you, whether you're just starting out with writing songs or if you're a seasoned pro and you're just kind of looking to get, some perspective. Maybe you're stuck in a frame of mind and a specific method that you're used to doing, but for some reason it's not giving you results and you just want to kind of change things up a bit. So hopefully this episode will help with that. So here is what to expect in today's episode. 1, using what I call a melody first approach when writing songs, plus my observations on how to write a catchy vocal melody. 2, writing songs from lyrics. And 3, my own approach for writing for more guitar-based genres like rock and metal and all that sort of stuff. And in episode 12, we're going to get more in depth with that, but I want to keep things a bit lean today for this episode. So if you're looking for some extra tips on how to write better melodies and lyrics, I just want to point you towards my free songwriting checklist. It's just a short PDF of simple steps that you can take to go from having no idea to starting your next song in the next 15 minutes. And I must say, it pairs quite nicely with this episode. So grab that for free at the link in the description below if you're watching on YouTube, or head to fastermusiccreation.mykajabi.com/songranting if you're listening in Apple Podcasts. All right, let's get into it.
This is just like a different question, but when you write music, do you write it with chords first or with melodies first?
It really all depends, Not only does it depend on, what comes out, it depends on the genre that I'm working into. Like, just to go off the top of my head, if I'm writing for somebody else, and like I have that job with Song Glorious, where you're writing custom songs for people who already are providing like a little bit of a backstory, and they have specific things that they want in the song. So that's a huge help. That's actually a really, really helpful prompt to get into the writing of the rest of the song, because the very first thing that I do after I, copy all the information and put it into my notes app, and then I like actually from there just sitting down and writing it in a notebook, just because I'm not distracted by electricity, screens, anything like that. I love that kinesthetic process of just, pen to paper and just slowly kind of, putting everything down, because what happens more often than not is that I'll start writing a line that they've provided, and then, it'll trigger something where it's like, ooh, that sounds like a chorus lyric. It could be like a simple few words, and it's like, well, okay, so how can I come up with a melody to suit these words? And it's something I'm working on too, because I have like default settings when it comes to that. Like I tend to, if I'm reading stuff, it usually winds up being like this really fast pop rock song where I'm like, and I'm trying to, steer away towards that, because I've done that many times and I want to, well, one, I'm burnt out from it, because it's just like, how many times can I, write the same song and make it different? But experimenting with different tempos is a big thing, but I digress. So the very first thing that I do in that particular situation is I start with the lyrics. Something that was shared with me from one of the staff at Song Glorious, which has been hugely helpful too, as far as saving time, is just, I don't know if I mentioned this before, but there's 4 things that have to be in the song. Like they have that list of like, what are 4 things that absolutely have to be in that song? So I start there. I just kind of look at what they've written down, and I try to make the chorus be that, because it's like the most important thing. What's good about that too is that, it's not like a bunch of stuff. Like they can only fit in so many things, and the story needs to be told in like 50 words or less. So the story is like the meat of it. So I consider the story like the verses and the pre-choruses and all that sort of stuff. So I'll organize it accordingly, where I'll write down those 4 lines. I see if I can extract a chorus out of it. And if I can't get the whole chorus, I will see if I can extract like, one thing that could be part of the chorus. And then I'll go into the story and see if I can piece together that. But I usually start with the chorus in those types of genres because the chorus is the focal point of the entire song, right? So it really helps to get some positive momentum going if you can just get a quick win like that and just be like, okay, here's a simple lyric. And then fortunately I have I've gotten really good at just being able to come up with something that's really catchy using not a lot of words. While I'm on the subject of that, actually, this is something that I would consider you trying out. If you're not doing it already, of course. This is a super intuitive thing for a lot of people too, but working with repetition when you're writing melodies, right? That's a lot of where that catchiness comes from, where it's just like, I mean, if you look at certain examples, like I always go to In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins. Do you know what song I'm talking about?
Vaguely.
You know, the song with like the drum solo, like goo 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 goo
Oh,
goo
yeah.
goo goo. Yeah, that's like the first thing that everybody remembers, and then immediately it's that chorus, right? But if you look at it, if you really listen to it and analyze it, it's so repetitive as far as the notes. Like, what is it? I can feel it coming. That's when it changes. It's like I can feel it, and then the first syllable of coming. But it's so catchy, it's so memorable. Like reinforcing that single note just helps it get in this, like, stuck in the listener's head that much more. So I follow cues like that, just kind of without consciously thinking about it. And that, that comes down to what music you listen to or what stuff. I internalized all that sort of stuff when I was a kid, so it's always just kind of in the back of my head anyway. I used to listen to a ton of pop music before Metallica came into my life. But even Metallica, like a band like that, they write super catchy stuff too. I am 100% confident that if you go back and you analyze your favorite bands and the most memorable parts, like the most memorable hooks of the chorus, the most memorable melodies, like the choruses or whatever it's going to be, there's probably like a good amount of repetition going on. Maybe not like the same note, like, but there's going to be repeating notes. And it's great because they kind of build a type of tension. As soon as you go to that next note out of it, it's like, whoa. But it's cool. It's like building that tension, but it's also setting your ear up to kind of like remember it, to internalize it. And that's what can make for such a powerful hook, is just having that repetition, because once that chorus comes back around again, you're like, oh yeah, that thing. So that's the first thing. That's for that particular genre, like working like in the pop rock, acoustic pop, contemporary, mainstream, very commercial genre. So that's one way. That's the method that I've really gotten accustomed to at this point. That said, I want other genres, like if I'm doing something really heavy or just something really guitar based, I mean, it starts from a guitar riff. It starts from, even if it's a chord progression, there's some kind of defining lick or riff that I incorporate into the chords. So it might be, I don't know how well you can hear this.
I know.
Okay. So, it's outlining a chord. I have the E minor, right? But then I have this little motif where it's and then chord, right? Different chords are involved there, but it's, some of them are more arpeggiated, but then some of them have more like licks to decorate the chords, right? It starts there. Like I have the lick first. So what was it? I started with that. And then from there, I kind of reverse engineer to see what chords fit underneath usually it's built from a root note that I'm, jamming on anyway. And again, that goes down to how well you know your chords and what feels comfortable for your hands and whatnot. But if it's a guitar based song, more often than not, I will be starting with a riff. That's going to be the focal point of the whole song, right? That's going to be one of the many hooks. And it always has to come back to that in some way, shape, or form. But that said, I've written songs in genres like that just based from a line that I came up with in my head. And given enough time with yourself, you can write entire songs in very unexpected places. I had this job when I was a young lad where I was doing pest control. I was an exterminator for like 7 years. So it was like a summer job, and it required, well, it left you to your own devices much of the time. You're on the road a lot, you're working alone. It's plenty of time to, do ear training, just listening to music all the time. And then after a while, I would get these, lyrics in my head, and I would start actually writing the song in my head before even writing anything down or anything like that. Just because my job was such a routine based thing, it was always the same thing every day, that I would actually get back to it at a certain time every day, which is crazy. And then eventually, that's where it really gets challenging, though, when you're trying to actualize that, when you're trying to like pull that out and get it recorded the way that you hear it in your head. That's one of the most common things I hear about from people when it comes to frustrations with songwriting. It's like, it doesn't quite sound the way it does in my head. It's like, I totally get that. It's like one of the biggest challenges. And I'm not even sure if I've quite achieved it ever. I think I've come pretty close, but maybe once I was like, that's it, right? But it's really tough when, especially if you don't know how to handle the technical aspects of recording or anything like that, or even, even knowing how to play the thing, right? It's just like, but if you're working with other people, I'm sure you've done this already, where you're humming ideas and you share it with you. Yeah. And that's awesome. That's awesome. If somebody else can play it, it's like, oh God, thank you. And just outsource. It's like, I don't need the headache right now. So yeah, it really all depends.
All right, there is episode 11. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you could get some inspiration to get started working on your own music, and hopefully you picked up some tips on how to go about getting started. But if you are struggling with that, be sure to grab the free songwriting checklist that I have here. It's a quick read, and it's designed to just walk you through how to get the creative juices flowing again. And I promise, if you just follow the steps, you're gonna see some results. So you can find it at the link in the description below if you're watching on YouTube, or you can head to fastermusiccreation.mykajabi.com/songranting if you're listening in Apple Podcasts. So thanks so much for watching or listening wherever you are. And just to put it out there, I love getting these types of questions, and I would love to continue the conversation. So I just wanted to know, what do you typically start with? Do you like a nice sounding chord progression? Do you need that in place before you start writing anything else? Or are you more focused on finding a really good melody before you move on anywhere else? Or are you neither and you just approach things from a lyrics first type of structure? Drop me a comment and just let me know. I love talking about this stuff. Thanks again. Songwriting.